Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the huge and never-ending and superbly well-funded propaganda machine in Western Europe, particularly taking in, say, Germany and France, maybe Switzerland to a slightly lesser extent, but the propaganda machine that's got avalanches and rivers of money flowing into it to extol the alleged virtues of mass black immigration. It sort of covers all immigration, but they really focus on the black immigration. And we can see that same thing happening in Britain as well. So obviously they're preparing the way for millions upon millions of blacks to come pouring into Western Europe from Africa. Now, given the massive population boom in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and the idea there's going to be masses of young people in Africa with nothing to do, nowhere to go, no jobs, no future, and to bring them all to bring many of them at least to Europe, that's clearly the intention of the globalists, and they just want to break down any resistance. And of course, anyone that questions this or asks about it or opposes it is Hitler, literally Hitler. So let's have a look at that now. If this mass migration was so good, they wouldn't need to tell any lies. They could point to, well, this is the benefit. Here it is, clear, straightforward, unambiguous. These are the benefits, but they can't. So they have to tell lies and shitloads of lies, which is what they do, which just illustrates quite clearly that it's not of benefit. It's certainly not to the indigenous population. So now I'm looking at one of many, by the way, and it's a co-production between a German state-owned news station or media station, which is really just a front for propaganda, globalist propaganda, and it's kind of done in conjunction with some globalist NGOs. Now, they bring in these radical activists to make commentary and to do the production, do the scripting and so on, but they don't declare them as activists. It's easy enough to find out. Just go online and you can find out that these people are radical activists, radical leftists, but they're put forward as being independent voices. Now, even the black people they use are radical activists, again, being put forward. Here's just another migrant who's giving their story about how they suffered from evil racism, from evil white fascist Nazi Hitler. But in fact, it's not. It's a radical off-the-planet activist and race hustler and race baiter, and they're using these people and making out that they're just this sort of rando immigrant that's suffering racism and oppression and so on. Nothing could be further from the truth. They started this program or this particular one, which they put out as a documentary. Well, a load of shit that is. They started, how can we create a propaganda movie to humiliate and to shame and guilt trip white people and artificially elevate black people as victims, white people as oppressors. That's the starting point. Let's create something that does that. So that it's put together as propaganda, and we need to accept that. But this particular one sort of had quite an emphasis on, it's so difficult being black in either France or Germany, and Germany seemed to get more of a coverage than France did, but it's so difficult to be black because we're surrounded by racists. Evil racists, white people, white racists, fascists. Now, there was no sort of evidence to support this, but there was just black people saying, white people say, I have no right to be in Germany, and that to be German is to be white. Well, I was born in Germany and I speak German, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm as German as anyone else, and and I have every right to be. And anyone that says otherwise is a fascist, quite possibly Hitler. Now, that's a bit of a stretch. Now, this particular activist, again, you can, if you do a little bit of digging online, it doesn't take long, you find out that they were African refugees with I would think, a very debatable claim to refugee status. And the woman arrives this African couple that arrives, I think 3 days before she gives birth to so clearly that was a setup thing. She wanted to give birth in a Western country. So this idea that they just rando people escaping, oppression in Africa or something, that's bullshit. That was a setup thing. And they must have been brought by people smugglers and so on. So this guy's born in Germany 3 days after his folks arrive. They've kind of been on welfare ever since. He's had run-ins with the police, but because he's had run-ins with the police and actually spent some time in prison, that just confirms the oppression. White man's law, white man's prison, white man's oppression. That just shows what a victim he is. Now, as far as he's concerned, he says he's as German as anyone else. Now, what people who have, say, lived in Germany for their relatives go back 1,000 years or something. Now, he's got very black attitudes and views. So he's got no European views. His views are very much, he's still got that tribal African attitude to things. Look at all the things you have. Why can't you share it with me? I am entitled to that. I was born here. I speak German. I am entitled to all the goodies you've got. You tell me I have to work hard for this and study hard. You fucking fascist! You fucking damn fascist! Telling me I have to work to produce something productive, to have the goodies that now your society, you damn well give it to me. You fucking fascist racist. So he's got a very African view of things, but insists that he's as German as anyone else. Quite a contradiction. Now again, they've aimed this at children, school children, so they can do the assertion and then the leap. A table has 4 legs. A cow has 4 legs. Therefore, a cow is a table. What, are you denying the 2 have 4 legs? Is that what you're saying? You fucking fascist. So they can do this strange conflation assertion game, which the globalist propaganda machine does. And they have to do if they're going to push their bullshit on the rest of us. Now, another black person says, well, the only reason that I stand out in Germany as a black person, the only reason I stand out is because whites are in the majority. So what we have to do is we have to change Germany so that blacks are in the majority. So then I won't feel out of place. I mean, wow. I mean, oh, holy shit. Did I hear that right? Then white people have to take responsibility for colonialism and slavery. I don't know if the Germans ever had slaves, did they? Have to take responsibility for colonialism and slavery, and therefore mass migration of black people to Germany is simply payback for those evil white colonialists. And it's, I don't know, Germany didn't really have much of a colonial empire. I'm not sure that one would fly. But the idea is white people have a responsibility to accept their wickedness and evilness. And one of the ways of doing that is to allow mass migration of black peasants from Africa to come into Germany. That will go some way to mitigating the evilness of being white. It will? Holy shit. And another one suggests that mass migration to the West of these people, of black people, is a form of wealth tax on white people, because all the wealth that white countries have, it's not due to productivity, it's not due to stability, it's not due to government, it's not due to organizational structure. It's nothing to do with that. It's because those fucking fascist white people, white supremacists, stole everything from the black people. All the black people will be living in Wakanda if it wasn't for those damn white fascist Nazis. So that's it. And so this is a payback to black people for the past, wicked and evil races and so on. Now, then another one had the chutzpah. Another black one had chutzpah to say, well, black people have actually always played a central role in German history or European, history, French and German history, but particularly German here. And that black people have always been leading, the black people. Did you know, this idea that Benz and Daimler and all these people invented, combustion engines? That's bullshit. Bullshit. Black Africans from sub-Saharan Africa invented all that, and it was all stolen by those fucking damn white Nazis. And they're the most incredible claims of the role that blacks were supposed to. Again, insane propaganda, but no one's pushing back. This is being put around the schools, and the government, the German government, is, from what I can tell at least, openly pushing this. Now, it's clear when you go through the black claims, there's a consistent thread that runs through it, and that thread is that we can't compete on a level playing field with white people. We're not as bright, we're not as hardworking, we're not as conscientious, we're not as focused. We just don't have that same worldview. Even if we're born here, even if we're born here of black people that are born here, we don't have that same worldview. And so we feel out of place. We feel lesser as people than the white folks do. And if we feel bad about ourselves, it's because white people made us feel bad. It's therefore their fault. It's not our fault for being unable to keep up. We elected voluntarily to join the team here. Now we can't keep up. We want everyone else to slow down. We want everyone else to change how they do things to suit us, so we don't feel bad about ourselves. So that's really the central theme of this, and that's why white people are evil. They're just better, and that makes them evil. So I just want to talk about a few things because it's quite childlike. When I was a kid, I don't know, 12 years old or something like that, the under 12s national soccer team came to the place I lived to do training. It's kind of like a program, I think. Came to do training in like a football pitch nearby, and they were inviting kids to come along and join their team and play friendlies with local sides and this sort of thing. And so I went along. Now, I was no natural athlete, or certainly no natural soccer player. In the that sense of timing and coordination. I was even if I worked my ass off, I never would have been more than a B grade player. So on the pitch were the kids who were the best in the nation, best in the land, and they were picked out by talent scouts as being really talented in this game. Now, so in the running around, I was there with a whole bunch of other kids. In the running around, they said, well, you and you can come on our team, and we were playing like the local kids, and now I was sort of, wow, I'm going to be in the team. And I kind of figured in that naive kid way that, I can keep up with them. I'm okay. I'm good. But when you get on the field, and it's different when you're looking at it from the pitch or the sideline. You go, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do this. But when you're actually on the field, and you're right in the middle of it, and the pressure's on you to deliver the result, like as in play the game, then you realise that you're just not up to it. And now. I remember thinking I was so far behind these guys that they were like, they were A grade, and I was like a million grades below where they were in terms of competence and again, the sense of timing, fitness, whole range of things. And they made me look like an uncoordinated, baby almost. I was just so far behind where they were. Now, at the time, I was quite sort of upset by that, but mainly because a lot of people I knew were there. It was in sort of my hometown, so I was getting jeered at. But the kids in the side came up to me and said, look, you are so fucking hopeless that you can do us a favor by standing on the sideline. Now, the coach or the ref even said, well, if you get rid of Billy Bob there, you're not allowed to have a replacement player, which means they went from 11 players down to 10. They still thought, you are so bad, you've got to stay on the sideline. It's better to have you off the pitch than to be on. Now, that was the difference between the level they played at and the level that I was at. Now, because I was jeered, hey, you're fucking useless. Hey, Billy Bob, you're a dickhead. Kids. And so I felt seriously humiliated. And if I'd had the sort of childlike necessity to say, well, I know what I'll do. Instead of making myself better, instead of working hard to be a better player, instead of catching up to you guys, why don't you guys all hop around on one leg, and that would make me the star player? Or why don't you guys have to all walk on your hands so I'll be the best player? That's the sort of insane mentality that the black migrants, or many of the migrants, not just the black ones, particularly the black ones, well, we can't keep up with you white guys. So we have to make sure you slow down to the point where we can either keep up or we can be the stars. And affirmative action and race, gender quotas, all that sort of stuff can play into that wider narrative. So now at that time, it would have been helpful, I don't recall anyway, that any adult came along and said, look, Billy Bob, this is how the world is. These kids are really good. They've got a lot of natural talent. They're training hard. They've access to the very best training and the fitness and they've got all that. You don't have any of that, and you don't have that natural talent. And even if you bust your ass every way from Sunday, you're still never going to be as good as these kids. So that's how it is. So you either play with people at your own level, other B grade or C, D, E grade players. You don't play at all, or you have to work as hard as you possibly can to try and get as close as you can to these guys' standard. You still won't get to their standard, but at least you'll be a lot closer than you are now. So those were now if an adult had come in, I don't recall an adult saying that, by the way, but if an adult had come along and said that, it would have kind of, as a kid, it would have put it in some perspective for me. But I felt terribly humiliated by that. I was so bad that they didn't even want me on the team. They prepared to have a 10-man team rather than have me off because I was that bad. And and looking back, I was well behind their standard. They were playing to a much, much higher standard than I was, and much higher standard than I could ever be. So now if we look at sort of other attitudes, I remember there was a friend of mine, this is going still at school here because I'm trying to sort of capture the childlike attitude of the black people or the migrants. All you white people have to slow down and change for us, not the other way around. And there was this friend of mine, and his younger sister, I would have been, I don't know, 14, and she was, I think she was in first year high school, so she'd have been like 11 or something. And she was quite the athlete, and had won trophies for racing against other girls. And one day we'd gone down to the local football pitch to kick a ball around, that sort of stuff. She decided to come along, and she looked at me and said, "I can beat you in a race." So, yeah, sure you can. And I wasn't an athlete. I was pretty decent runner, but I wasn't an athlete. So she said, "I'll give you a race." So I said, "Yeah." No, she insisted, pestered me. I said, "All right then." Anyway, I beat her quite handily, and she started to cry and stamping her foot and all this sort of thing, saying that you should have let me win. You should have let me win, and saying to her brother, "Tell him he has to let me win. I'm going to tell Daddy on you." So that was her response to it. She couldn't handle losing, and certainly not by the margin that I beat her by. Now, it wouldn't have happened if she hadn't have got in my face and pestered me. I didn't want to race her, for goodness sakes. But that again typifies the childlike attitude of, in my view, the women and migrants when they come along. You have to let me win. You have to let me. And so everyone has to slow down to make the least capable person look good or not feel bad about themselves. And I've seen this in a number of sort of other areas. I remember my son was, I went to pick him up and from school one day. We're going somewhere, but I'd got the time wrong. I thought I was supposed to pick him up at like 2:30, but it was meant to be 3, and it was a sports day. So I found him, and the teacher said, "Well, just wait over there, and they'll be done shortly." But it was quite a feminist teacher, and she decided that she wanted the boys to play soccer again. Actually, in this case, soccer against the girls' team. So it's all girls' team, all boys' team. Now I watched the teacher at work. She picked out the best boy players and told them to sit on the sidelines and have a rest and kiss. So she's purposefully loaded the dice here, taking the best boy players out of the team. So it was the least capable boy players were on the pitch, and my son wasn't a particularly good player, so he was in the boys were on the team. So anyway, the boys were still beating the girls. The girls were still getting beaten by this low grade boys team. And the teacher was, I could tell watching it, the teacher was quite disappointed with this, that she'd loaded the dice. She'd forced this gender confrontation that shouldn't have really happened. She loaded the dice and the girls were still losing. And this you could see didn't sit well with her. I didn't say anything, but didn't sit well with her. So she started calling out to the boys to let the girls win. You have to let the girls win. You have to let them win. And then she started talking like a child, as if that this was going to somehow create some illusion of equity or equality. You have to let the girls win. And I thought she was on the verge of tears, the fucking teacher, about it all. But it was ideologically just so important to her. And I thought, gee whiz, a private school for you, my son. And that was acted on very quickly. He wasn't staying in a government school for a moment longer. And once I saw that, because to me it illustrated, among other things, it illustrated just what was going on in the government school. And this was, over 20 years ago. Over 25 years ago. So when having a look at that, that sort of attitude is the one that's conveyed in these so-called documentaries. Not documentaries, they're just propaganda things. But this idea that black people are coming in, they can't keep up. You're making them feel bad, and because of that, you're a Nazi, racist, fascist, Hitler. So we have to slow everything down. We have to have affirmative action. We have race gender quotas. We have to do the whole thing. We have to constantly tell white people how evil and fascist and Nazi they are until we get equity, as in equal outcomes type equity, just as you would in some sort of perverse socialist society. And I think that's where we're at now. Coming back to the black people, the activists, they weren't fucking just random people. They were activists that were being supposedly interviewed with very perfectly scripted utterances. So again, there was nothing organic about that. And everyone came out, well, it's white people's fault. If we feel bad, if we're not accepted, if we aren't given the best jobs, if we aren't given the easiest time, if we don't get the most handouts, if we don't live in nice houses, if we don't drive, it's white people's fault. And it's just proof of their evil, wicked, Nazi, fascist racism. That's all it was. It was just dumping on white people just all the way through. But at one point was a black person accepting responsibility for anything. Now, given the activism, these people, they're paid race hustlers, and that's not stated, of course, in the so-called documentary. But it just illustrates where we're at today and the sort of things that are going on and the lies that are being told at taxpayer expense. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.